Secretary Scott Bessent, who, if confirmed, would be one of several officials responsible for imposing those tariffs on other countries, has on several occasions said tariffs are a means of negotiation. He did write in a Fox News op-ed last week before his nomination that tariffs are, quote, a useful tool for achieving the president's foreign policy objectives. If Trump were to move forward with the threatened tariffs, the new taxes would pose an enormous challenge for the economies of Canada and Mexico in particular. Trump transition team officials did not immediately respond to questions about what authority he would use, what he would need to see to prevent the tariffs from being implemented, and how they would impact prices here in the U.S.
We're joined now by Dr. John Connaughton from the Bell College of Business at UNC Charlotte. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Good morning.
Want to start here. Obviously, this news just came out yesterday, so we're still reacting to it. But what do you think the impact would be? Say that's not just a negotiating tactic. Say we go in there January 20th and these tariffs are imposed. What impact would that have?
Well, I think we really need to back off on that. I think that this is just kind of the first round of the Trump negotiation style, and that is, talk is cheap, but economics, money matters. And, for Mexico particularly, they send to us about $500 billion of products each year. That's pretty significant to their economy, not as significant to our economy. And of course, at the end of the day, have to think about what it is they send to us and how that's going to affect consumers. Number one, they send, of course, is oil. Number two is car parts and automobiles, and most of the U.S. Big Three have significant production capability in Mexico. A lot of the vehicles that you and I purchase are assembled in Mexico. And number three is electronics. I'm pretty sure that most of your viewers today are watching on a TV that was made in Mexico. And as a result of that, that's where this tariff, 25% tariff, would hit. But I think there's an important thing to note here. A tariff of 25% is not the same thing as a sales tax or a value-added tax of 25%. So product prices are not going to go up by 25%. The tariff is actually applied to the import price of the product. Think of it as actually a little bit less than the wholesale price as it comes across the border. And then after that, we have the amount of what's left on the tariff being absorbed sometimes by the seller and sometimes by the consumer, portions of each. So it doesn't turn out to be a 25% increase in prices. It's probably half of that by the time it actually hits consumers.
Dr. Connaughton, so many of the Americans that voted for Trump to be president was because of the economy, or they felt that he would be able to take the economy where it is to hopefully a better place in the next 4 years. Now, you were just saying maybe we should back off saying that these tariffs are definitely going to happen. If this just is a negotiating tactic for Trump, what does he hope to get out of it? Is it more than just a threat? And what's the response that you expect from these three countries? Do they cower down? Do they meet in the middle somewhere? Like what is the realistic outcome?
Well, I think number one, China's probably not going to do a darn thing. But as far as Canada and Mexico are concerned, we are big trading partners with both of those countries. They're in the top three of our trading partners. We've already heard that Trump and Justin Trudeau, the Prime Minister of Canada, have had a conversation about this. And for Canada, essentially trying to help us in closing our northern border is a lot easier for them than it is for Mexico. Because the crush is simply not as great. And so I think that as far as Canada is concerned, I think this is probably all going to go away before Trump is takes office. As far as Mexico is concerned, I think Trump is looking for Mexico to agree to the same provisions that they had back under his first administration, and that is for these asylum seekers. The policy was remain in Mexico. And I think he wants to work with Mexico to create that environment again so that they don't get processed in the U.S., at which point in time we have to go ahead and release them in the U.S. and hope they show up for their court dates, but they remain in Mexico until they have a court date.
Dr. Connaughton, looking at this in terms of how the economy will react underneath President-elect Donald Trump there, and you kind of liken to some of the things we saw during his first term, negotiating tactics, trade agreements, do you expect them to be better or worse under the Trump presidency?
Well, I think that we need to take a step back here and realize that anything that the president or Congress does in terms of affecting the economy is probably months down the road. It's not going to happen in the first 100 days. There'll be some things that'll happen where he signs executive orders. Certainly the border is going to be one of those. Maybe reinstating the Keystone Pipeline, and a lot of deregulation, removing regulations and obstacles in other parts of the economy will be done in the first 100 days through executive order. But in terms of the big items, taxes, et cetera, and some of the things that were promised during the campaign, those probably aren't going to get done anytime soon. Most likely will get done late summer, early fall, when reconciliation enters the picture and they're able to pass bills in the Senate or pass legislation in the Senate with just their 2 or 3 vote margin in not needing the 60 senators like they would earlier in the year. I think that's one thing. I think the second thing we have to understand is anything that is done, even in the first 100 days by executive order, the lag time before we actually start to feel that is 6 to 9 months down the road, and in some instances even longer. For example, the Keystone Pipeline. Yeah, they may start constructing that in 60 or 90 days, but it's going to take another year or more before it's actually in place.